Okay, so I'm Brian, and I'm doing my video project on the Latin square design. I guess I want to start off by talking about Leonhard Euler, the inspiration behind this element organizing method. Euler was a German mathematician and physicist, among a bunch of other things, and he's known for a lot of his work in mechanics, fluid dynamics, and anatomy, among other things. They decided to name the Latin square design after him because he used a lot of Latin symbols in his work and organized this data in the method that I will explain in the next slide. So the Latin square design basically is just a method of organizing data in a grid, or organizing elements in a grid so that those elements do not appear twice inside of that grid, and you will see on the next slide. So in this pretty simple example, you can see that element A only appears once in this row and once in this column. And the same goes for element B. B only appears once in this row and once in this column. You'll rarely ever use just two elements, but in this example, it's a 4 by 4 square where A only appears once in this row and once in this column, and the same goes for element B and element C and element D. Another example would be this 5 by 5 square grid example of a Latin square design, which is a little bit more involved. The more and more you increase the dimensions of your square, the harder and harder it can be to actually organize your elements, and the different amounts of combinations that you can use to organize your elements goes up exponentially. Uh, One example that I want to talk about was an example I read online of how researchers used Latin square design to organize data in an actual real-world experiment that they were doing on pesticides, a pesticide that they were using to control the rate at which grass would grow at a high altitude and a low altitude. And they wanted the pesticide to be useful in high altitudes and low altitudes. So what they did was they did their experiment and actually organized their results in a Latin square design because they didn't want the results from the high altitude testing to just consecutively appear in the same column, and they didn't want the results from the low altitude testing to just consecutively appear. So they wanted the data to be clearly separated. So they actually organized it in a Latin square design so that they could keep it more organized and it would be easier for the researchers to understand.